Well, good morning and welcome again to The Journey. Welcome to those joining us online as well. We're glad you're with us today as we're continuing our series, Weak or Wise. And we've been talking all about wisdom this month, how we can make wise choices because our choices shape our life and our relationships. And so we want to make the most of this new year by making wise choices. And so we've been talking about different things we see in the book of Proverbs. Last week, as Katie just mentioned, we talked about parenting. We looked at how we could influence our kids to help them make good choices. We looked at ways we can deal with discipline and correction and things like that. We've talked about managing our money with wisdom. We looked at Proverbs about how we can save up like the ant does, how we can deal with debt, how we could live generously. One of the Proverbs said, "He who refreshes others will be refreshed," and like how we can experience how the blessings of God in our life by being a blessing to other people. We talked about how humility plays into our choices one of the weeks, and about not making choices to build up our ego, but instead making choices that build up our life and our relationships. And it all began week one. We talked about just the general wisdom and how the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, as it says in Proverbs, to look to God, that He is the designer of life, and so we want to look to Him for wisdom. So if you've missed any of those weeks, I always encourage you to check them out on our website or our YouTube channel. You can go back and review those, and you can find those there. But today we're talking about another thing we see in Proverbs, some other wisdom for our lives, and we're going to be talking about marriage and dating and things of that nature. And so wherever you find yourself in that point, we'll be talking about some insight and some wisdom in Proverbs. And I've been married to my wife. It'll be our anniversary this year. Will be our 28th anniversary, and so we've made it 28 years. And which is really weird because she's only like 29, I think, right? Is that how it works? But no, we got married when we were young. We were in college when we got married. We dated in high school, and so we got married when we were in college. I had a year left, and she had 2 years left at college. And so I took my last year in 2 years, and because we were married, and I was working a lot and stuff like that. And so it was like the summer, we were getting married. We got married in July, and a few weeks later, we head back to college. And we grew up in West Michigan, so we had our wedding and stuff up here with all of our family and things. We went to school down in Georgia. I actually have my school shirt on today. This is Georgia right here, in case you're wondering. Tacoma Falls College, a little dinky school no one's ever heard of. Anyways, good place. It was fun. But we packed up the U-Haul after we were married. It was a small U-Haul because we didn't have a lot of stuff because we were just newly married college students. And we drove down to Georgia, and we got to our townhouse we were living in right off campus. And we were unpacking things and, just doing all the things you got to do when you move. You got to return the U-Haul. You got to break down all those boxes and throw them away. You got to put everything in its spot. And so we were doing all those things. And then like a couple days later, my wife says to me, "Have you seen my shoes?" I was like, "No, I haven't seen your shoes. Are they still in the box somewhere?" We didn't have hardly any boxes left. We looked in them. Nope. Looked all around the house. Nope. No shoes. And she says, "Did you throw away my shoes?" I was like, "I hope not." And so I thought, well, I threw all the boxes in the dumpster. I better go check. Hopefully they haven't picked up the trash yet, in the big dumpster. So I get to the dumpster, and it hadn't been taken out yet, so that was good. Hop in, digging through there, find a box, and there was some stuff there was like some paper, kind of like cardboard paper type stuff, some packing material that was on top of her shoes. So I didn't notice her shoes were in there, but I saved the shoes. I saved our marriage. We were a month in. I thought I blew it already, but we made it. So it was almost a tragic thing. But anyways, I'd like to say that over the last 28 years after that I didn't make any dumb decisions like that again, but that would not be true at all. And I feel like as we were talking about marriage today, I still feel like even after 28 years that I'm still trying to figure out how I can be a better husband. And I feel like I'm not really qualified to really talk about this I'm not like a professional marriage person or anything like that. I'm in it just with everybody else is, trying to do my best in that relationship. And so I'm not going to be sharing kind of wisdom from me today. I'm going to be sharing wisdom from God's words, and I think that will give us some insight for our relationships no matter where we are. Because, when it comes to our relationships, and even a marriage especially, maybe you've said the I do's, and you've made that commitment, but that's just a one-time wedding event. A marriage is really about this ongoing commitment to each other to work it out. And just like we talked about with parenting, our relationships have these different stages we go to. Like maybe you're newly dating right now, or maybe you're newly married, and it's all lovey-dovey, and you're all touchy-feely, and things are pleasant and nice. You just haven't gotten to the stage yet, past that. They call it the honeymoon stage because that doesn't last forever. Pretty soon, someone's going to eat egg salad for a few days, and you're going to come home, and the house is going to smell like, did someone die in here? Did you do this to our house? Or are you going to get into a situation where you're stressed at work, and you end up taking it out on your significant other, or there's going to be something you say or something you do, and you're going to regret it, or there's just going to be there's just other challenges and other stages we go through. When you first get married, then all of a sudden you add maybe kids into the mix. That changes your relationship dynamic. Or maybe you get a promotion at work and you have more responsibility. That can change the dynamics of your relationship. Just even getting older, like health changes or things like that, or just growing older and maturing. Our likes and our dislikes change, and maybe our health situation changes, and that can play a part in our relationship. There's different stages, and so to make a marriage work, it's not just a one-time commitment at a wedding. That's an event. To make a marriage work, it's an ongoing commitment through all the different stages of life. And so how do we do that? Well, again, we're going to be looking in the book of Proverbs today to give us some insight. As always, I want to encourage you to check out the YouVersion Bible app. You can follow us in there, and you just scan that QR code. You can follow us in there. We do different things like featured reading plans. There's one going through Proverbs right now. If you haven't done that yet, you can still jump in on that. You'll see some directions on the screen to follow along with some of the verses and such today if you want to check that out. There's details for that. But we're going to be looking in the book of Proverbs today, looking at some of this insight about how we can stay in this committed relationship. And it really begins with, who are you looking for? We're going to be talking about these different aspects of Proverbs. So we're going to see kind of 4 different themes that play out in Proverbs. There's lots of other things. But there's these 4 things about our character, about our purity, about forgiving each other, and about building each other up. So that's what we're going to see as these themes throughout the book of Proverbs. So it begins with character. Here's what it says, Proverbs 18:22. It says this: "He who finds a wife finds what is good and receives favor from the Lord." Now, we're designed to be in relationships. God designed us to be in relationships. We don't have to be in a relationship. You don't have to be married, but we're designed to be in relationships. But marriage is one that we can be in, and our marriages are supposed to be a reflection of God. And so he does say if we are in this relationship that it is a good thing, but not that we have to be. But what we want to do is continue to take steps in these relationships. And so, but it begins with the beginning. Here's what it says, Proverbs 31. It talks about a wife of noble character who can find. She is worth far more than rubies. Now, you notice maybe one thing you might notice is it's talking a lot about the wife. We have to remember that the book of Proverbs is written from a father to his sons. And so there's a lot more things about talking about wives. You might feel like wives get picked on a little bit in Proverbs, and because there's not as many verses referring to the husband as it does the wife. But again, that's just the perspective of a father saying, this is the type of wife you want to find. And here he says, this is the type of wife, one with character. A wife with noble character who can find, worth far more than rubies. Now, when we're looking for someone to be in a relationship with, what this is saying is that character is critical to the situation. Like, we might look at someone and we might like the way they look. We might like the things they do. We might have common interests, but those are not really what builds a relationship of longevity. His character is what's critical. And you might feel like, yep, I get that, and I would like to find someone, maybe you really relate to this verse, if I'm looking for someone with character, a husband or a wife, and I can't seem to find one. And it says here, it is a little bit like a treasure hunt. It's like there is a little bit of, you have to seek out to find those things. But we can't just settle. Here's what it says in Proverbs 19:2. It says, desire without knowledge is not good. Whoever makes haste, his feet will miss his way. So it's saying desire, if it's just based on desire, the physical attraction, without looking at it with wisdom or looking for someone with character who's making wise choices, so if we just go based on desire, that we're going to end up off the wrong path. It says this in Proverbs 31:30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Like, we can feel the physical attraction. Maybe someone's flirting with you. That charm, it says, can be deceitful. It can make you make an unwise choice about who you're in a relationship with. It talks about beauty there. Beauty fades. Like, those are the things that don't make a relationship stand the test of time. It's about this character, who we are becoming. And notice it says in this verse, that the woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. It comes back to this fear of the Lord. We've been talking about this throughout this whole series. It's a theme we see throughout the book of Proverbs. It's not Halloween scared fear like that. I'm scared. It's not like that. It's fear in the sense of awe and reverence. It's this understanding of God is bigger than us, greater than us. He's the designer of life. I'm looking to him for him to guide my life. See, when we take steps with God, when we look to him like that, that shifts who we are becoming. That builds character. And our character leads us to making wise choices. So this is why it's so important. We see in the Bible, it talks about different things like how we shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who isn't following Jesus if we're getting married. It talks about the dangers of that because it's like two oxen who are yoked together, but they're pulling in different directions and they can't plow straight because they're pulling in different directions. Because when we are in this relationship with God, it shifts who we are becoming, changes our character, and that character guides our choices. We want to be in a relationship with someone who has the right character, not just based upon physical attraction, not just based upon charm or vanity, not just based on what they do or maybe even similar likes or dislikes, because all those things fade and change as we go through life. Character is so important. So if you're looking for someone, man, character is what we should be looking at. Who are they? Who are they becoming? Where's their heart at? If we're in a relationship too, character is just as important. As we go through life, we talked about this, things change, our lives go through different stages, our relationships shift and change. We should continue to focus on our character of who we're becoming. Now, this is why one of the main reasons I think it's critical is because what we see is our relationship with God as we fill our life with his love. It says the fruit of his Spirit is love and joy and peace and patience and gentleness and self-control and knowledge. Like these are the things that make a relationship work. And so we're asking God to fill our life with his love so that it might overflow into our relationship, guiding us in who we're becoming, but also in the choices we're making. That's so important. So maybe you're looking at this and you're like, okay, I get that, but I still feel like I'm trying to find someone of noble character and I can't find anyone. Well, maybe it's a little bit like fishing. We've talked about this before at the Journey. A little bit like fishing. If you're going to go fishing, whatever lure you are using is the type of fish you're going to catch. And so if you're trying to catch a certain fish, you have to use a certain lure. And so if we're trying to find someone of character, someone who's maybe following after God, what are we doing to lure them in? Like some people would say things like modesty or not being promiscuous or things like that, that's weak. It's like you gotta get out there, you gotta work the clubs, you gotta work the bar, you gotta show some skin, you gotta act a certain way, you gotta act this way or that way. And they're like, that's the way. If you don't do that, you're weak. But that's not how it is. It's really about being wise in the choices we make. So maybe it's this way. We talked about this before too at the Journey. It's a quote from Andy Stanley. He says, you need to be the one you're looking for is looking for. That seems confusing, but let me say it again. You want to be the one you're looking for is looking for. If you're looking to be with someone who has character, you got to show that too. If you want to be with someone who is fearing God and following after him, and then we got to live that way too. If we're going to just throw out there this lure of sexuality or whatever it might be, you're going to be in the spot where there's no good guys out there. They're all a bunch of jerks. It might be the case of that's just what you're throwing the lures out to grab. It might be the case that you just have a hard time finding someone of good character, because that is a little bit like a treasure hunt. But again, character is critical. It's so important to our relationships because our character guides our choices. We want to make wise choices. Another thing we see in the book of Proverbs when it comes to our relationships is about purity. Purity. It says this in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3. It says, for the lips of an adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to the death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to her way of life. Her path wanders aimlessly, but she doesn't even know it. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Don't go near her or the door of her house. So here it's talking about, actually this is a common theme we see throughout Proverbs, is this warning of don't sleep with your neighbor's wife, don't commit adultery, don't be with a prostitute. We see this a lot, and that was a little more common, I guess, back then. It would be things of your neighbors, you lived kind of out in the country or whatever, and maybe your neighbor was a shepherd and he's out in the fields all the time, and his wife was looking for some attention, and that could be something that happened. Or back then, people had multiple wives and different things like that, so that played into it. Or maybe there was town prostitutes and different things like that. A little bit different, maybe situation than what we might face today, but the warnings are still there. Because when we make this decision, it leads to death, as it says in these verses. It can destroy our life. It can destroy our relationships. It's not something to mess around with. I like how he says in there to stay far from her. Like don't even go on the path around that. We see the same kind of warning in Proverbs 6. It says this, "For this command is a lamp, this teaching is a light, and the correction and instruction are on the way to life, keeping you from your neighbor's wife, from the smooth talk of a wayward woman. Don't lust in your heart after her beauty, or let her captivate you with her eyes. For a prostitute can be had for a loaf of bread, but another man's wife preys on your very life. Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned? Can a man walk on hot coals without his feet being scorched? So is he who sleeps with another man's wife. No one who touches her will go unpunished." And it says in verse 32, "But a man who commits adultery has no sense. He is not wise. It's weak. Whoever does this destroys himself." Now, again, it might not be about prostitution or your neighbor's wife or things like that, but what does that look like for us today? It might look like pornography. It might look like an affair with someone maybe you end up working with. It might not be like your neighbor's wife or the prostitute. But if you notice in there, when it talks about purity, it talks about not just purity of action, but purity of our heart and our mind. The goal is to stay pure, to have some guidelines and some guardrails set up so we don't even entertain these thoughts. The verse said, don't let the lust settle in your heart. Don't let your eyes take captive of that. Stay far from that path. You see, no one wakes up one morning and says, "You know what? Things have been going good, but I think I'm going to have an affair today." Sounds like a fun thing to do, right? Like, no one does that. It's usually a series of small choices that you end up entertaining the thoughts. It might begin with your eyes. It might be we have to pay attention to what we're seeing, because we can see some things and think the grass is greener on the other side, but it's really not. And then we can settle into our hearts, and then we can start to entertain some thoughts. We begin maybe flirting with someone in the office or someone around our lives or whatever, and it's just a series of small steps that can blow up our life and relationship. And so it's like, don't even mess around with that. Make some guardrails so that's not even something you walk near. Like, some things I do with my life is, like, I never take like a meeting one-on-one with a woman, like, by ourselves. Like, if someone wanted to meet with me, like, I wouldn't meet at church here with a woman, like, by myself. I would make sure there's either someone else in the building, or if I had to, I would meet like in a public spot. Or like, I never go in a car ride with just another woman, just the two of us. Like, I try to stay far from that. Not just me entertaining the thoughts, but not even putting the thought in someone else's mind either. Just having safeguards and guardrails and guidelines. We have to pay attention to our purity of not just our actions, but what we see, what's in our hearts, in our minds, because it all begins there. Another thing we see in the book of Proverbs for our relationships is about forgiveness. It says this in Proverbs 17:9. It says, "Whoever would foster love covers over an offense, but whoever repeats matters separates close friends." Do you want to foster love in your relationship? It says we have to cover our offenses. We have to be quick to seek forgiveness. And not just say, "I'm sorry," but to cover the offense, to make it right. It says if we just let those things foster, if we just keep those things going, it separates the relationship. It says in Ephesians, it talks about, like, don't let the sun go down on our anger, because if we continue to let these things fester, it just breaks the relationship further and further apart. We have to forgive. We have to make it right. And we have to be willing to give forgiveness too. Like, one of the things we've talked about here in the past is about assuming the best in our partner. Now, you might be in a hard point of your relationship, but even then, do you really think your partner has evil intent towards you or goodwill? Now, it might feel like it's a struggle, but that doesn't mean they have evil intent. I'm guessing if you're in a relationship, there's been times in the past you can look back and be like, yeah, we had it good. Like our relationship was good, and I know they have good intent towards me. You're just in a hard spot. Like, let's be quick to seek forgiveness, but also quick to give forgiveness. Let's cover the offense and put it behind us. Now, we might end up in the same spot again because none of us are perfect. We make some of the same mistakes, but let's not let those things fester and brew. Let's seek forgiveness and assume the best of each other and offer forgiveness. But we have to seek forgiveness and make it right. The Bible talks about this. This is another reason why it's so important to follow after God. It says, forgive as God has forgiven us. Like, I think until we understand how much God has forgiven us, it's hard to forgive other people. It's hard to even seek forgiveness. But when we realize kind of our place in that we don't deserve this love that God has for us, that it just changes our hearts and our perspective. We need to forgive as he has forgiven us. It's not just, again, seeking forgiveness and like saying, I'm sorry. We have to also cover that offense, make it right. Another thing we see, the last thing we're talking about today is about building each other up. Proverbs 14:1 says this, a wise woman builds her house, but with her hands the foolish one tears hers down. A wise thing to do is to build up the person that you're with, your partner, your significant other, your spouse, to build them up. We can just get in these habits where it's just tearing each other down or saying things that don't need to be said and not taking enough time to be intentional about saying the things to build them up. The wise thing to do is to build each other up. That's how a relationship works. We don't want to end up like these other proverbs. Again, you might feel like you're getting picked on as a wife, but these are some good verses here. Here's what it says, Proverbs 21:9. Better to live on the corner of a roof than to share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Do you ever have a neighbor who's maybe up on the corner of his house drinking? You'll know why, because it tells you right here. Proverbs 21:9. Better to live in the desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. Eek. I didn't say those things again. I'm just reading what it said here. But that applies not just to women too. Same thing for a husband. It's better to live on a corner of a house or in the desert than with an argumentative or angry husband as well. The goal is to build each other up, to make them the best they can be. Some people see a marriage like it's 50-50. That's really not how a marriage works. It's really about 100-100, about giving your all to the other person, about putting their needs before your own, about making them at their best. And it's giving your all to that. And when two people are doing that, that's when a relationship thrives. When we're willing to give what we have to make the other person better. It brings us back to like the humility weeks we talked about a few weeks ago. That means I have to humble myself and not make choices just to build up my own ego, but make choices to build up my partner, to make them at their best, to give my all into that. That's how a relationship works best. And that's not easy. And so maybe you're like, I'm not even sure how to go about that. So we have something special we're kind of throwing out there with this series with today, and we're calling it the 10-Day Marriage Challenge. And you'll see it up on the screen here. And it's something that can help us build each other up. And so there's a QR code if you want to jump in on the 10-Day Challenge. And I would encourage you and your partner to do that because we'll be sending out some encouragement and some reminders and stuff like that. So you can scan that QR code. You can go to our website on the Next Steps Center. We'll take you to that. You can sign up on the Connect card there. On the blog, it has all the details. You might want to check that out. We'll be emailing that out later today as well. But this is a way for us to put this into practice. There's what it's going to consist of. Today is February 4. In 10 days from now, it is February 14. Valentine's Day. So take this as a reminder, gentlemen, to be ready for that. And so this is maybe something you can help make Valentine's Day even more special this year. And this is something we can do. Maybe things are going fine with your relationship, but this is a way just to keep things going in the right direction. Maybe you could just use a little kind of jump start in your relationship. This is a way we can do that. Maybe you're feeling like things are really struggling right now and really hard, and this might be a turning point. And so what it's going to do is the 10-Day Challenge consists of this. There's this book and this philosophy called The 5 Love Languages. And maybe you've heard of that before. Maybe you've done it before. Even if you have, again, this is a good reminder to do this. And basically how we express love in 5 different ways, and everyone has their primary way. And so it begins with taking this little quiz online, and you'll learn your primary love language. And the idea is to have your partner do the same thing and to share that with each other so you know each other's primary love language. And so then when you communicate with them, you're doing it in a way where they can best be loved, where they best feel loved, where they can feel built up. And so it begins with that quiz, and then it's the idea is to be intentional about that, and we're going to be sending out some ideas and things we can do. Be intentional about that over the next 10 days, and then at the end, to take some time on maybe Valentine's Day, or if you're going out for dinner or something like that, just to share like over the last 10 days, maybe how that has been helpful for you in your relationship. So just a little something that can help build up our relationships. We can build up each other, because it's wise to build up each other. It's foolish to tear each other down. The nagging, the argumentative, the quarrelsome doesn't do any good. Let's build each other up. So we see throughout the book of Proverbs these themes. There's lots of other things in there. We see these themes containing many other verses we didn't share today. But this is a reminder of what we talked about. Character is so important. If you're looking for a relationship, and character is what you should be looking at, who they are becoming, who they are on the inside. And for all of us to keep working on our character, and our character is best developed by letting God shape our life. We want to stay pure in our relationships. We want to put up those guardrails and not even flirt with those ideas. Keep far from them. We want to be forgiving of each other. We want to build each other up. Those are some ways that we see in Proverbs that can help our relationships stand the test of time. I don't know if you've ever done this, where you maybe see another couple and you're like, man, they just seem to have it so easy. They just seem to be like a perfect fit. Like, I wish we could be like that. Like, you might see that and think of your relationship that you're not like that. But what we don't see is all the hard work they've put in to get to that point. All the times they've forgiven each other. All the times they put the other person's needs in front of their own to build them up. We don't see all the times they've stayed on the right course of purity. We don't see how they've worked on themselves and their own character to make their relationship better. Like, we don't see all of that. We just see, man, they seem to be a perfect fit. And there's no reason why your relationship can't be seen that way either. Well, you can't get to that point. But it's going to take that commitment. And commitment isn't just a one-time saying, I do. That's a wedding. Commitment is a marriage where people are focused on building each other up and doing what's best for that relationship through all of the different stages of life. So as we kind of wrap it up today, again, I want to encourage you to do that 10-day challenge, but I also want to just pray for you in your relationships. Maybe you're here this morning and you're like, man, I've been looking for someone. I just feel I don't know where to look anymore. Can God just show me and guide me in that? Maybe you're here and you're like, my relationship's on the rocks and we're just struggling. And so I just want to take moments to pray for all of us wherever we're at. But I want this to be a chance for you to pray too. So I'm going to ask you just to close your eyes with me right now and just to respond in your own heart. Maybe it's just you're praying for, God, show me who can be best for my be in a relationship with. But maybe you're here with your significant other right now. I just want to encourage you to grab their hand next to you if you're with your significant other. Just pray for each other right now. When you're done, just squeeze your hand and let them know that you prayed for them. Just take a moment. Let's pray for each other. Lord God, as we are here this morning, you know our hearts, you know where they're at. Maybe when it comes to relationships where we feel lost and broken, just trying to make it work and it doesn't seem like it's working out. So we're asking you, God, for your love to fill our lives and to shift the direction of our life and relationships. May we be connected with you in such a way where it shifts our character, where it changes our choices, where it shifts our relationships. God, I think of those who are maybe looking for someone. May you just guide them to someone who will be one of noble character on the same track as them. God, will you just work in their own hearts too, that they will just be that one that the other one is looking for. God, I pray for the relationships here, maybe marriages or relationships that are just broken and hurting right now. I know, God, that you are a God of restoration, of resurrection, and you can bring new life to these relationships, God. Bring your healing, bring your love, May your love fill these relationships where it can overflow to each other. And may you work your miracles in these relationships, God. I pray for the people who are just struggling right now in their relationship, that this might be a turning point for them, that they will take these steps to work on it and see how you can shift our lives and our relationships. God, bring your healing, bring your love. May it shift our life. In your